what I will say is that I'm a tad disappointed. There is nothing wrong with the shoe, I just have such high expectations of the Deviate Nitro shoe because I absolutely loved. So just a couple runs done and dusted in this one. Now this is the Puma Deviate Nitro 3 and these are my first impressions. But before we get into it, and if you guys want to support the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And in the specs, so this one is a neutral up-tempo training shoe and you're going to be able to pick it up in Australia for $250 or $160 in the US. Now in the weight, what you can see there is the weight in my size, a US 8.5, so 256 grams or just over 9 ounces. Now in the stack height, a bit of an increase here from the last year's version, 39 in the rear, 29 in the front, and that's going to give us a 10mm drop. And in the upper, so the material that they're using here is a engineered mesh. Now this engineered mesh has got some really nice breathability zones, especially here through the toe box. So super breathable here. And the mesh is also reinforced by Puma's power tape that they've got around the shoe as well. We've got a really solid heel counter at the back, probably a medium amount of padding around the heel collar. A really thin tongue that's gusseted. It's got that wing fit cut at the top. Now the tongue itself, it's made out of like this felt type material and it's the same material that's in the Elite version of this shoe, which I think is a bit of a, it soaks up a lot of sweat, so it does stay wet for a long time. Now, lacing system here, not pretty standard here, so eyelets up and down both sides, but they've got this cable up on the midfoot that I think that is there to help with the midfoot lockdown of the shoe. But overall in the lockdown, I've had no issues with it. Pretty good through the midfoot, no heel slippage whatsoever. And in the fit, now true to size in the length, but in the width, man, this shoe is narrow. So way too narrow in the toe box for me and really low volume as well. If I could have my time again, I would definitely get the wide version of this. And in the outsole, so what they're using here is their tried and tested, and it is the market leading outsole grip on the market, if you ask me, Puma grip. So fair bit of coverage here on the bottom, as you can see, most of the forefoot's covered there, and in the highwear areas at the rear. I do like to see that they have got some slits through this Puma grip at the front because it certainly needs it, because this rubber coverage, it is quite thick and it is a little bit slappy and a bit loud on the road, well, especially for my foot strike. But performance wise, in the grip department, there is nothing better here. So this thing doesn't falter even on those super wet, greasy roads that pretty much brings all shoes undone. This thing is still as solid as a rock. Durability wise, historically Puma grip is excellent and I expect no difference from this shoe. And in the midsole, so they've got a dual density setup here. So two types of foams. And what's interesting to note is that they don't actually claim that on the website that it's got the two types of foams in it, but it certainly does. So we've got their top layer, which is their Nitro Elite foam, same foam as they use in the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which is the race shoe that I absolutely love. So that is the top layer. The majority of that foam though is in the forefoot and they've got a little bit in the rear, as you can see there. Then they've just got their standard Nitro foam on the bottom layer. So a big chunk of that in the heel and a thinner layer here in the forefoot. Sandwiched between those two layers of foam. Full length power plate. It's not like a proper carbon plate, but like a carbon resin plate or a carbon composite plate because it's still got a bit of flex. Can't do that to a proper carbon plated shoe. Now, as I said, rigidity-wise, it's still pretty stiff though, even for a carbon resin plate. So, in comparison to other shoes, so it's stiffer than the Boston 13, which I'm also still testing at the moment. Twist test though, it's quite a stable shoe there, so not much twist left and right there. Now, in the geometry department, it does look like it's got a more of an aggressive rocker than the previous version, which I will say it does. However, the forefoot rocker here looks more aggressive than what it actually feels on the run. So it doesn't feel overly aggressive, but it's certainly noticeable on the run. And in the ride, so the first word that is coming to mind here is responsive. So especially through the forefoot, especially when you start putting some pace through the shoe and you're digging into the super foam, you do get a little bit of sink there, you get a little bit of pop, and it is certainly responsive through the forefoot. It has got a sweet spot, I think, and as I just said, it does come alive and it does feel much better when you are putting some pace through the shoe. Now what I need to mention is what's going on with the heel here, because through the heel it feels quite firm. It's not harsh, so it's not as harsh as what I found the Boston 13, but it's still quite firm, quite stiff through the heel, and I think that high drop is really, it's probably just taking away my experience of the super foam in the forefoot, because it's just, this heel feels really dominant on the run. So no matter if I try to strike more forefoot or strike more, midfoot or might forefoot, just to try to dig into this foam, I'm still getting a lot of that, because the heel is just so big, I'm still getting a lot of the heel, just sort of taking away the sensation that I want to feel out of that super foam. So I didn't have that issue with the previous model, but I'm really hoping the more I run in this shoe, I think hopefully the heel is just going to soften up a little bit. And I can start feeling a little bit more softness with the shoe, because yeah, there's softness there, but it's mainly through, as I said, just through the forefoot, and I'd like to feel just a little bit more through the heel. I find it really stable as well, so especially through the heel. So at the slower paces, it does feel okay, but as I said, a little bit firm through the heel, but very stable, but comes alive once you start putting some pace through the shoe. And likes in this shoe so far is certainly number one, the feeling through the forefoot. So once you're digging into this super foam, I love that pop and that responsive feeling that this shoe provides. I absolutely love the performance of this Puma grip, so it doesn't falter in the wet. And I also like how breathable this shoe is just here through the toe box. I can definitely feel that wind coming through and cooling the toes down. And what I'm still figuring out in the shoe is just that 10mm drop. It feels a little bit higher than that, and it doesn't really work for the way I like to run. And dislikes in the shoe is certainly this narrow toe box. And just wrapping up my first impressions here with this shoe, so what I will say is that I'm a tad disappointed. There is nothing wrong with the shoe, I just have such high expectations of the Deviate Nitro shoe, because I absolutely loved the model before this, one of my most favourite shoes of all time. I feel like it's lost a little bit of zing, a little bit of excitement. Yes, still, it's a responsive, it's a fast shoe, but I think, for me, I think the addition of this, increasing the offset or increasing the drop to 10mm, I think it's just taking away that magic that I used to feel with the super foam in this new model. So yeah, it's just a little bit too dominant for me, as I've said. But early days, I'm going to keep persisting. Hopefully the heel's going to soften up a bit and it's going to feel magical again for me. But anyway, guys, that's it for me. Any questions you've got regarding this shoe, how it compares to anything else, just ask me in the comments. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe to their channel, and we'll see you next time.